So I'd like to introduce everybody to Charlotte Varacole, who's a Director of International Relations, who has kindly agreed to give the welcome address for today's, which is the 6th Moving Out of Academia to the Environment Industry. I hand over to you, Charlotte. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel, and thank you very much to all of you for being connected today. Moving out of academia has really proven to be one of the great success stories of the alumni program, and I think that is for good reason, because it really combines very inspirational stories of our alumni who've gone on to make a deep impact on society, and also very practical advice on the next steps that you can all take in your journeys. And the topic today is just incredibly timely, the environment and the environmental industry, because CERN has really made the environment and sustainability a particular focus of activities. My colleague James Gillies, who will moderate today's event, was the driving force really behind, and also the main author of the lab's first environment report that was issued last year. And looking ahead for the second mandate of the Director General, she has really made the impact on society of our activities a main focus. And also here there is emphasis on the environment in 3 areas. Firstly, working to minimize the impact on the environment of the lab by implementing recommendations of our environmental steering board in 11 high priority areas, but also to pursue actions and technologies that aim at energy saving and reuse, also under a dedicated energy management board, and to identify and to develop certain technologies that may mitigate the impact of society on the environment. And I think added to that, also a very positive impact that we can have is exactly through the transfer of the skills and the competencies of our colleagues in the lab who are looking to move forward in their careers. So I think there's a very important societal impact through the people that we have. So I really want to thank the alumni who are here with us today to share their stories. I know that they will be really inspirational to everybody taking part. And thank you to everybody for being part of this, for your interest and your support for the Alumni Network. I hope very much that you have a very enriching experience today, and that you take something away that can be helpful for you as you take the next steps. So let me hand over to Rachel, who has a couple of housekeeping issues before we move on with the event. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Charlotte. I was nearly on having to have someone say you're on mute. Thank you very much, Charlotte, for your unwavering support of the CERN Alumni Network and your very inspiring welcome address. Thanks also to our speakers and their accompanying colleagues who are also interested in networking within the CERN Alumni Talent Pool. We have Christopher Kalbecken, who will be joining Sophia from NIVA, and also William Ramsey, who's with Mario and Daphne Technology. And I understand that they are currently looking for software engineers and an experimental physicist in plasma. I'd also like to say a big thank you to our excellent moderator, James. So as Charlotte said, just a few words about this event. We will have 2 different sessions followed by 2 Q&A sessions. So you're very welcome to put your questions into the chat, or also raise your hand if you'd like to, if you're not shy and you want to come on camera. Then after the second session, I will open up the breakout rooms. So you are free to come and go as you please. Each of the speakers will have their own rooms, and they will actually close the room when they need to leave. I'm sure you can contact all of the speakers, today's speakers, via the alumni.cern platform. And if you haven't got an account yet on the alumni platform, I invite you to join this ever-growing supportive network. And then very importantly, please do make sure that you keep your profiles up to date. So this allows us to know what you're up to and how your career flourishes. And then it'll also help us to demonstrate the positive impact of a CERN experience. Finally, thanks to all of the participants also for joining us. And I'd like to thank you in advance for completing the online survey that we're going to send out. This helps us improve and serve you better. So please enjoy and make the most of this super opportunity. And I now hand you over to James.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Charlotte. Thanks for the introduction to me as well, so you all understand why it's me moderating this now, but I'll say no more about that. It's a great pleasure for me to be here, and I'm really looking forward to the session. I spent the morning looking through the profile of our 5 panelists, 5 unfortunately because Celia Barry Exton had to drop out at the last minute, and there are some amazing careers in there, all of which, of course, have passed by CERN in one way or another in various different areas and capacities and lengths of time at CERN. What I'm going to do is introduce everybody one at a time. I'm going to do people, bring people on in alphabetical order by their first names. And then, as Rachel said, you can ask questions on the chat at any time. We should have about half an hour at the end of each session to go through questions. And we'll be looking out for hands in the air if you want to pose a question yourself. So without any further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Charlie Cook, who worked as a civil engineer at CERN on the FCC project, I understand, for a couple of years between 2014 and 2016, before moving into the field of energy supply and in particular electrical vehicle charging. So Charlie, take it away. Let's hear your story.
Thank you very much, James. Thank you, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. CERN feels like a bit of a fairy tale a few years ago, so I'm a bit jealous for everyone who's still there. But I'll spend the next few minutes just through my journey pre-CERN, during CERN, and post-CERN up to you today.
Charlie, excuse me, sorry, Charlie. There are some issues with the volume. We can't, not the volume, but you're very sort of metallic. You're coming across a bit like Metal Mickey. I don't know if perhaps because it worked perfectly before. Maybe it's your earbuds. I don't know what if you were just speaking into the microphone when we did the trial run.
Yeah,
that would be good. Can you just
let's try this. Is that any clearer? Is that much?
Yeah, please, can you take it away again, please?
Thank you. Odds are from this company called Apple. They don't make very good products. So as I was saying, yeah, jealous basically of everyone who's still at CERN because it feels like a bit of a fairy tale a long time ago. So I'll spend the next few minutes running through my journey pre-CERN, during CERN, and up until today. Pre-CERN, I was a civil engineer. I studied at the University of Nottingham. It's not on this slide, but I actually got the opportunity to do a year abroad at Melbourne University in Australia. And in Australia, they have a slightly more flexible system where I was able to study subjects that went slightly beyond the concrete and steel that we had to focus on in Nottingham. And I had the freedom to study some subjects that were focused on the topics of climate change. And studying climate change back in 2012 was a pretty terrifying experience because the problem was as large as it is today, but the awareness and the action was a lot lower. So that really stimulated me to say, well, actually, I'd really like to focus my career on something that tries to, in some very small way, chip away at this problem. So from university, I actually applied to go straight into the energy sector. I wanted to work in renewables. I ended up applying for the same role as a friend of mine at an engineering consultancy called Arup in London, and they had a really good energy consultancy team. My mate actually got that job, so I didn't get that job, but we're still good friends. But I actually feel like I got off quite lucky there because as a result, I put an application into CERN and found myself after university starting at the campus in 2014. Spent 2 years as a fellow at CERN, working on the FCC feasibility study as a civil engineer, working with a fantastic team, incredible people, an incredible project. Had just an amazing time, as I'm sure everyone else is or has in a similar role. But after 2 years, I felt like actually I wanted to get back into something in the sustainability world. So I was thinking I'd quite like to get into renewables of some kind. I thought maybe offshore wind would be interesting, or maybe a solar project manager or something like that. But at the same time, I'd always had a desire to do more on the commercial side of things, which comes from basically just an interest when I was really young. My granddad started a company, and so I've kind of grown up in a family business environment, and that's always been part of me really, is to do something in the business world. I had some, I think, really good advice, and this obviously doesn't necessarily mean it's the right solution for everyone by any means, but I was given advice to actually go and study a master's that would give me skills and education in the commercial space to add to the experience I've actually had in the engineering space. And I was lucky that there was this course that had just started at Imperial College in London in the business school, which was called Climate Change Management and Finance, and just ticked all the boxes for me. That course is still running. I mean, if you're interested in this sort of thing, I highly recommend it. It essentially takes the normal management and finance lessons that you would learn around, basics in accounting, project finance, all of the lingo in the finance world, which is intimidating, but actually very simple once you get to understand it. And it applies those topics to decarbonisation sort of projects. So how to use these tools in the renewables world, and how to look at project funding to make renewables more accessible and scale faster. So that was a brilliant experience. That was 1 year. And whilst I was doing the course, I did an internship, and I found myself interning at this UK energy supplier called Octopus Energy. Octopus at the time was a very small company, no one had heard about it, but I got quite lucky to get involved in the early stages of what is now one of the UK's 14 unicorn companies, or companies or startups worth over $1 billion, and Octopus is now worth $2 billion. So just astounding growth in this time frame. My job was basically to bring new products and services to market for electric vehicle drivers. So I was, very much focused in the electric vehicle space, which kind of just came about by chance, really. I never kind of saw myself there. I just happened to be given this job when I joined Octopus. That experience lasted about 3 years. I realized that actually there might be an opportunity for me to start something for myself. So in about the beginning of 2019, I started looking at whether I could launch my own business. I had an idea, I didn't know if it would work, but Octopus were very kind, and they actually let me stay on for 2 days a week, and that ended up being 12 months of 2 days a week, which was perfect because I still had a bit of an income, and I had 3 days a week plus a bit of the weekend to build the beginning of this business. And so that business is Right Charge, and this is where my animations might let me down, but here we go. So Right Charge is my business today. It's focused on supporting electric vehicle drivers as they switch from a petrol or diesel car and they get their first electric car. And basically, it helps them figure out what charge point to have installed in their house, and also which energy tariff they might want to switch to, because it makes sense to switch to a specialist energy tariff as soon as you get an electric vehicle. And that incentivizes people basically to charge overnight when the electricity prices are lower. And there's a green angle because, at least in the UK, overnight electricity is cleaner, it's 25% cleaner than evening electricity, which is the default method of charging for people who aren't familiarized with these off-peak tariffs and this technology. So that for me, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm actually raising another round of funding currently and building a team. And it ticks all the boxes for me because I've got my business and it's got a sustainable angle. So that brings us up to today, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks very much, Charlie, and thanks for those retro transitions. A lot of fun. Okay, so our next speaker now is Giorgio Cortiana, a particle physicist by background who's worked on collider experiments both at Fermilab and at CERN, before also making the transition into the energy domain, working for E.ON from 2016. Giorgio, over to you.
Great, I hope you can hear me. Very good, so let me start. So as introduced, I'm really happy to be here. I'm currently heading the energy intelligence team within the AON Global Data Analytics, and I'd like to start my speech by giving you a little bit of background of my academic career. So I started as a high energy physicist at the University of Padua in Italy. I've been working back then at the CDF experiment, so Collider Detector at Fermilab. At that time, it was the most powerful collider in the world. And I've been working there with the upgrade of the trigger system that were devoted to the Higgs surge. And then I did my PhD on top quark physics. And I also did 2 years of postdocs at the University of Padua. And then in 2008, actually, I head to Germany, where I joined the Max Planck Institute for Physics in Germany. And I had 8 years there working for the ATLAS experiment. I joined just before the LHC basically was starting operations, and have been working mainly in two topics. One was the data-driven tracking alignment systems. So we were basically using cosmic ray and beam spray to align basically the silicon detectors of the ATLAS experiments. And I continue my journey on the top quark physics, basically concentrating on the precise measurements of the top quark mass. I put here on the right one thing that was topic results, I would say, of my scientific career. It was I had the pleasure to contribute to the first combinations of Tevatron and LHC measurement of the top quark mass, and I was kindly glad to see that this paper, though it's quite from 2014, is still being cited today. It's like 700 public citations, and what is really particular of this experience actually was the fact that if you are clever enough, right, combining different data sets, you can really push the boundaries of what is possible. In this work, actually, we took all the measurements that were done for the 4 experiments at LHC and Tevatron, so ATLAS and CMS and CDF and D0, and without doing anything else, but just by cleverly understanding how the measure worked and what were the assumptions of the visual measurement, we could push the precision, right, of that the measurement of the top quark mass farther. And I think this is something that opened my eyes, right, going back, what is the possibility, right, that data can provide you. And at the end of actually 5 years ago, almost right tomorrow, I decided to switch my career and go to the industry, and I had the pleasure to join AON. AON, I will spend some few words about saying what is about AON. It's a major electricity provider at the European level. It's concentrated of energy network operations and customer solutions. We are managing 1.6 million kilometer energy network, and we manage around 32,000 industrial sites. We have over 800,000 connected assets to the grids, and we are operating also more than 350 heating networks. Overall, we serve 50 million customers, and with 70,000 employees, we are operating in 15 countries Europe-wise. So what are the challenges that we are actually facing in the company, and how can we help them? So as you might know, we are facing new energy world transitions, which is characterized by the decarbonization, decentralization, digitalization. By decarbonization, of course, we are switching from fossil fuels, right, to renewable energy sources, which by nature, right, they are on one side volatile, but also very decentral. And this, of course, poses quite some challenges, right, because you need to kind of be able to coordinate all of those in a holistic way in order to achieve and meet the demands at all times. Luckily, the digitalization is there to help us, and with the help of these tools plus the AI, right, technology, we can increase higher level of coordinations in these systems. So these are digitalization AI are set the key enablers of the energy transitions, allows, for example, physical asset optimization and steering, flexibility management, as well as the creation of innovative and sustainable customer solutions. So what are we doing actually in my team? Our goal is actually to optimize and leverage and orchestrate all assets enabling the energy transitions. So as you can see in these slides, we are operating at the intersection of three main pillars. On one side, we have the assets, which could be, of course, combined heat and power plants, PV or wind installations, but also EV infrastructure, storage system, data centers, and all the networks and the substations. On the other hand, we have the energy market. As an energy provider, we have, of course, to purchase the energy for our customer, and we have to do it in the best possible way and the cheapest way so that we can offer competitive tariffs for our customers. And finally, we have the customer side, out of which we can really leverage the flexibility that they can offer, for example, to interlink all these three pieces together. So what we are doing in the team, we are developing advanced optimization algorithms, holistic anomaly detections and asset portfolio monitoring systems, logistic and stock optimization for asset and spare parts, as well as state-of-the-art recommendation algorithms to decide when it's a good time to sell or buy energy in the energy market. And of course, accompanying all of this with cutting-edge forecasting models. What we are also doing is to optimize the flexibility of the various assets. And recently, we also started a pilot program, right, and a roadmap to apply quantum computing to solve this complex system. So I said, this is in a nutshell what we are doing. I'm happy to come back with you and answer your questions, also in the breakout sessions. In the meantime, of course, if you want to connect, here are my details. As Rachel mentioned before, feel free to contact me through the alumni network, and you have here a link to the current job openings of the E.ON worldwide. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Giorgio. I'm sure there will be lots of questions later, but for now, I just would like to move on to Manel Sanmati, who was a cryogenics engineer at CERN from 1998 to 2006 before transitioning into industry. Manel, over to you. You're muted, Manel.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Can you see the slides?
We can see and we can hear you. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, trying to find the buttons. So yeah, pleasure to be here and nice sharing this experience with all of you. So actually, it's very nice that the first two speakers, we are well aligned in the present business that we are doing today. So it's an excellent opportunity for me as well to maybe even do good business. So yeah, I will share with you my experience. I will basically start for the beginning, the background. I was at the Technical University of Catalonia, a nuclear engineer, but at that time it was pretty much focusing already at that time on not only nuclear, but as well on renewable energies. So at that time I had the seed already of going green, even though it was a few years ago. And I started already thinking about renewables. And actually, one of the points is we visited during the university, the Tor Supra, which is a facility of a fusion reactor south of France. And it was a kind of an inspiring visit that I will catch up later. So basically, I moved out of Barcelona to finalize my studies. I went to Grenoble, where I could link with my first professional experience. I was involved, I would say, in large scientific facilities from that time. I was at CEA, and then I moved to the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility, and then I got really trapped by that. I mean, I loved that that atmosphere, that all those technologies, and well, the community brought me to the link that we have today. We're sharing with you today, CERN. So I got a position in '98 at CERN as cryogenics engineer for particle accelerators. At that time, it was LEP, so it was the former one. And actually, it was extremely exciting because I enjoyed the last 2 years of LEP, trying to reach Higgs boson, but not really reaching it, but with a lot of controversy and trying to push it forward. And then we dismantled everything. We removed the actually, I was responsible of part of the dismantling of the cryogenic equipment. So it was kind of a sad period because the tunnel was empty. And then we filled it again. So it was great. And just at the point where we were to start the LHC, I just decided to move away. A couple of years before leaving, I had already in mind that, well, I was too young for deciding to stay at CERN for all of my life, I said, look, I may try something else. And 2 years before, I tried to complement my skills with project management master, and then a kind of MBA, executive MBA in Master in Technology Enterprise at IMD Lausanne. I had already the idea to jump out of to the industry and do my business, and I prepared myself for that. Post CERN, so what happened after that? Actually, I wanted to create my company, but I did not create my company because moving back to Barcelona, an opportunity arose. So it was doing the same at CERN, but for fusion technology. So here I had my old dream of taking part in fusion technologies in Barcelona, my city, and coming back to sustainable energy. And then for me, it was a dream. And I joined the team without hesitating, and it was even in my city, so excellent. But well, at the end of the day, after 3 years, I said, it's about the same, right? And big project, the same as CERN or same approach. I said, nah, let's jump to create my own company. And I decided to create my startup. It was a pretty much focused on PV and cogeneration plant, CHP. But one of the co-founders and CEO, it was a bit of in the middle of the crisis, so was struggling, and it was at the end of the day a lot of services, so struggling. And then, I had another opportunity to move back, not to academia exactly, a research center, but doing a bit of business. So I was in touch with academia, but really doing business development. So I had to manage a project on fusion technologies, but relationship with industry, as well for electrical engineering. And then I would say from 2015, I was head of the technology transfer department. So it was a lot of relationship with industry, and it was really what I wanted to do. I created several projects. You have here some logos and you may find information, but it was about creating ecosystems for technology transfer, creating startups, bringing research to industry. And that's what I wanted to do. And this was pretty much focusing on energy. IREC is a research center on energy. So it was really my field, doing the bridge between research and industry. And that's what I did until last year, or even I'm still doing part-time. And I still had the objective to create my company since my failure in 2010. And then one of the best researchers we have, we partnered last year, and we decided to create Bamboo Energy, which is a software platform for energy flexibility and demand response. And actually, it fits a lot with Giorgio business and part of the things he mentioned. So now we are in this nice adventure. So creating finally a startup company and doing our own business in energy sector. A couple of insights from my side of if I summarize my career, I think CERN has been, is, and was at that time a kind of a backbone of my professional experience. It's really an excellence, the champion league, I would say, of technology for me, and it has been always a very nice asset and the baseline. Even though this is the most relevant part, I think keep learning all the time. I completed my skills with project management, business management, and whenever is needed, I just try to complete it. So it's very important to keep going and keep learning. Creating ecosystems. It's not only that you're doing your job, you're just looking at your to-dos. It's about relationship with other actors, stakeholders, the value chain of energy, of research, of whatever, clients, associations, providers. Everyone can bring you something that may make you aware of something which is important. And finally, soft skills. It's not only about technology. At CERN, we know a lot of, plenty of technologies. We are the best ones, but it's about people. You need to negotiate. You need to lead teams, communicate, and we are not teach that at university, and you need to learn it during your lifetime. And finally, kind of a vision I have of, if I see backwards now, for me, I mean, to build up these human castles without human towers, I see my career a bit like the same. I mean, you need a lot of fundamentals, which may be as well the training I got at CERN or the university. It's a basement, so you need a solid structure to build up on. You need plenty of knowledge that you among the years, you just bring yourself, a lot of partnerships. So you need to touch yourself with your colleagues, otherwise you will not reach the top. But somehow, at one point in time, you need to risk as well. And the guy up in the top of this tower is risking. So at some point in time, it's about taking risks as well. So people, knowledge basement, a bit of a risk and a lot of fun. That's all from my side.
Thanks very much. Some very good advice and some very wise words there, and some memories as well from the end days of LEP. I remember that period extremely well. That was an excellent time. So thanks, Manel. Our next speaker is Mario Michan, who spent some time working on antimatter at the antiproton decelerator on the Alpha experiment before moving to EPFL and setting up his own company, Daphne Technology, to clean up the shipping industry. So let's hear about that. Mario, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, James. Can you see my screen? Yeah?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. This time, I'm Mario Michan, Juan Mario Michan. A little bit about myself. I was born in Colombia. I moved to Canada when I was a little bit younger. I did all my education in Canada. Before I did my PhD, actually, I worked for quite a bit, for significant years, mostly in the maritime industry. I followed my wife to the UK. She did a PhD in the UK. At the same time, I completed my PhD and started working at CERN. That was a fairly nice transition directly from my PhD. And eventually I moved to Switzerland. And now I live in Switzerland. This is my country of residence. When I went to CERN, I went to the antimatter factory, as you mentioned, to the antiproton decelerator. So the antiproton decelerator, I work for a group that's called Alpha. They do antimatter research, anti-hydrogen. They do a spectroscopy in anti-hydrogen. They have been able to trap anti-hydrogen and do a spectroscopy. I worked there for 2014 until 2016, building a laser system to do laser cooling of anti-hydrogen. And just in the 2 years, they were like fantastic years at CERN. It's super interesting experiment. And these guys, after I left, I mean, these guys are like a paper machine. Every year they pop a new Nature paper. And some of them, they've been very nice to me and they include me in some of those papers. This is the last one that they just published this year. They have been able to laser cool anti-hydrogen, first time ever. So they can really test what happened with the antimatter in the universe. I think some of the experts are here in the crowd today. It's very amazing, very fantastic what they do. So I will be always remember that. It's a very nice memory for me at CERN. So what happened at CERN as well, but I mean, I never really saw myself as a researcher though. I actually always, since before I started my PhD, wanted to work to start a company really. I was interested in entrepreneurship. And it happened in 2015, there was this CERN entrepreneurship meetups. So I don't know if this is still ongoing in CERN, but I was part of that. I think that was the beginning. And they had this pitch competition and I had an idea. And I went to the pitch competition in 2015 and I won. Wow, I got the first place and they gave me a pile of books. And I said, well, someone cares about this idea. It seems to be interesting. So let's take it out of CERN. So I went to the Swiss Plasma Center at EPFL, it's plasma related. I discussed with the professor there. I said, well, I would like to develop this. And they say, yeah, you know what? Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfectly aligned with what we do here. So just go and get the money and then you can do it. So I went to the VP research and I get my pitch and the guy's like, well, you know what? We know nothing about what you want to do. You seem to know about the marine industry, the market. So we cannot give you an EPFL grant as a external from EPFL, but we will invite you to the canton. I mean, you seem passionate about it. So we'll give you the chance to go and pitch with the EPFL students for the canton. You might be able to get a grant from these guys. And I went there and I got the first 100,000 Swiss francs. And I went to the EPFL Swiss Plasma Center. And that was really the beginning of Daphne. And then I started, well, more grants until I incorporated the company. And that's how I formed Daphne Technology. So Daphne Technology is certainly related to the marine industry. What we do is we use energetic electrons to reduce air pollutants. And I guess we're a climate tech company, and the focus is to enable companies to reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. But we not only do greenhouse gases, we do toxic gases and what they call short-lived climate pollutants. So we do the entire spectrum with energetic electrons. And this has never been done in mobile applications. There has been some applications in land bases, but we basically use technologies that have existed for some years. We developed something new, we patented, and right now we are helping industries that are hard to decarbonize to get on the program, start reducing their pollution. And the main one that we work for is the marine industry, large commercial vessels. And why that? Because I worked in the industry for many years before I went into academia. So it was just natural, but right now we see applications everywhere. So today, Daphne Technology is incorporated in Switzerland. We have subsidiaries in Sweden and in Norway. And the best thing that has happened is we have created an amazing team. William, our CTO, is in this meeting. And today we have a very good team. We have fairly good support by the Swiss government, by the European Union, and by very large VCs. And we have a technology that really focuses on sustainability. We do especially what you call from the United Nations goals 13, which is climate action, 14, life below the water, in the sense that we don't pollute the sea. We clean our act, if you will. And 15, we don't produce things that ended up as a land waste. So fully closed loop circular economy, and we help the industry to go through this decarbonization path, which is incredibly difficult for industries such as the marine industry, to go through this fuel transition and eventually realize a sustainable industry. So that's what we do. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation and to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thanks very much. That's a very inspiring story. And you made it all sound very easy. I'm sure it wasn't quite as easy as it came across in those last 5 minutes. Okay, so we have one more presentation to go, and then it's going to be over to the audience. So don't forget, you can post questions using chat at any time, or raise your hands after the last talk. So our last speaker is Zofia Rudjod, a data scientist at the Norwegian Institute for Water Research, who has many years of experience as a particle physicist behind her, largely on the ATLAS experiment. Zofia, over to you.
Thank you, James. Before I start, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this event. It's a pleasure to be here and today. So my path to environmental industry was not obvious at all. So I started in 2000 as a physics student, and then I went as a Socrates to Niels Bohr Institute in Denmark. I took a particle physics course with Mogens Dam, and I got totally fascinated and passionate about the experiments at CERN. It was really my dream to join, and I did. In 2004, I joined the ATLAS collaboration. And then I continued working at CERN for almost a decade, completing my PhD in 2009, and then finally having the chance to look at the real data and the hadronically and the Higgs boson coupling to tau leptons, confirming its Higgs boson, and working at the trigger level in the ATLAS control room. So it was very exciting time. But in 2013, with the end of the run one, it's been a decade at CERN, and I felt like, okay, the Higgs boson is there, and I would like to try something else in my life. So I accepted the position as a researcher. Actually, what is important, I really liked physics in general and being a researcher. That's what I liked. I never had this entrepreneur drive that you guys describe. So I really wanted to stay within physics. So I started working on Earth imaging, and the work itself was very interesting, I need to say. But having always have to think about number of dollars in a drilling well was totally unsatisfying to me. So eventually in 2018, I got the opportunity to join the NIVA, which is a Water Research Institute. And I took this opportunity, and I've been working there and enjoying working there since. So I will tell you a little bit about NIVA first. So NIVA is a water research institute doing different analysis for industry, for water quality, but also all different type of lives which we find in water. And it has around 100 to 100, between 100 and 200 researchers who are experts in their domains. So you have marine biologists, environmental chemists, oceanographers who naturally don't have background to work with data. They have an enormous expertise, but they don't know very often how to acquire the data, how to model them, and also how to extract the interesting information out of this data to move forward. So my role is very diverse. I work, for example, one of my important duties is to work on the ingestion and processing of real-time streams of data from different sensors installed on boats or autonomous vehicles like gliders, which are monitoring the status of the ocean for both for climate changes, but also for different ecosystems. I'm also involved heavily in prototyping and automating novel screening technologies. Seriously, we humans produce tens of new chemicals every day, and some of them are toxic, and policymakers are not able to catch up with providing the list for screening. Okay, look, if you don't have this and that toxins in your water or in your environment. So having a tool which will provide you having tools which provide a generic way to assess the level of pollutants in water is a great environmental impact. So that's also things which I'm heavily involved in. In addition, we also have projects with environmental DNA and different type of also modeling environmental fate of different chemicals. So it's many different data analysis being conducted at NIVA. So for my current role, a lot of skills which I acquired at CERN turn out to be really key and very useful. So naturally, the data science skill, a lot of statistical modeling, working with real data streams, but also to develop complex processing chains like I did at the trigger level at CERN. They are very useful in my for my current role. Programming naturally, but some of besides the obvious skills, programming skills like Python and C++, also working on the same code base with many contributors and being able to handle different programming techniques and styles, let's say. It's really very important to have this flexibility. The research skills naturally are very useful because but they are useful everywhere to be able to learn fast, to get quickly into the complex problems and acquire knowledge from different research, natural science domains. Last and not least, communication skills and all the soft skills, teamwork and work with multicultural environment are always useful. So that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sophia, and thank you to all of our speakers. That was certainly very inspiring. And when I look at my own career, I left academia, but I lasted 2 years and then I was back again. So I think you can all be an inspiration to all of us, actually. So we do have a question, and as I said, if you raise your hands, you can ask them directly. We have about we'll take a break about 3:10 for 10 minutes. So for this first question answer session, I'd just like to talk about the careers that people have had. After we come back after the break, we'll be asking people to talk about their tips and advice and the kind of opportunities. So we'll come into that kind of questioning then. So question that's been posted in the chat is from David Birch. I don't know if you want to ask it yourself or shall I ask it for you? Either is fine. I will read it then. So Giorgio mentioned he's looking at applications of quantum computing for EON. I'd be interested in hearing more about that. And I noticed actually that in terms of advanced computing techniques, you're not the only one who mentioned that. Sophia, you mentioned machine learning, and Giorgio, you mentioned AI as well. So maybe that's an angle we could develop a bit more. But let's start with you, Giorgio, to answer that one.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's something that it's a program that we started around 1.5 years ago, when we realized that the complexity, right, of the current energy systems are steadily increasing. And one of the problems that you might have, right, in this system is how you can coordinate, right, all multiple players around, all the multiple assets, to make sure that you can achieve and meet the energy demand at all times. So we have several applications and use cases that we are currently developing. One is for example, asset scheduling, right? So how you, which asset you want to start. It's also related to the e-mobility. So how can you optimize, for example, the charging schedules across millions of vehicles, right? That you want to perhaps pool together in order to make sure, as Charlie mentioned before, that you get the optimal schedule to minimize the cost for the customer, but also to improve the energy footprint so that you can charge at times where you have larger shares of renewables. Another thing that we are doing is around quantum computing is, if you imagine, local energy systems, you might have small households that are equipped with PV and batteries, and they want maybe to trade electricity with their neighbors. And this is an allocation problem, again, that you have to decide which party is enabled to trade with whom in order to maximize basically the welfare of the systems, and of course also the self-consumption. So there are many of these kind of applications. There are some others goes also to the grid topology. So how can you, for example, study in the complex network topology, how to minimize, for example, faulty and a chain reaction that would lead to large area blackout. So you have to decide at which point of the graph, right, that you, if you imagine the network, you need to cut to redirect basically the power flow in order to minimize exactly the risk of blackouts. So all of these are kind of example of applications. And again, it's not limited only on quantum computing. We optimization problem or graph problem. We are also looking at quantum machine learning. So how can we improve, right, our machine learning algorithms in order to learn fast, right, or with more data, right, in order to be able to capture some sudden or let's say not so easy to capture phenomena.
Thanks very much. Do any of our other panelists want to chip on that subject? Maybe not. David, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks. That was a good answer.
Good. Thanks very much. Okay, so then we've got more questions coming in. I'd like now to go to Clément, who's handed up on Helsons.
Can you hear me fine?
Yep, we hear you.
Yes. I'm a physicist in the Atlas collaboration, since quite a long time, and I'm wondering if you see a limit in terms of age, for transitioning to out of academia, because for me it's basically the only thing I knew, was to do physics basically, and especially in this type of industry. Are you recruiting? I mean, do you see that there is such limitations? Because at CERN we acquire a lot of expertise on specific domains, but then at some point, if we like to use it elsewhere, yeah. So that's it. Hope that was clear.
So who would like to take that one? Manel, I see you've,
Yeah, I wouldn't say that there's no, I mean, what I mentioned in my brief presentation is that the background and the knowledge that CERN offers, or we bring from CERN, it's already something which is an extremely valuable asset. And this, for me, may compensate any barrier in terms of age or whatever. What is true on the other side is that there are plenty of young people really interested in renewables, in green economy, and this sector. And there is plenty of new technologies popping up. So, but I mean, this will always happen. What is important is the knowledge, all the background we have, which is extremely valuable. Giorgio was talking about the artificial intelligence, or even other cloud quantum computing, there is a lot of digitalization, and physicists, which may very easily jump to computing and programming, are really skilled for that. And the approach of solving the problems and managing the technologies, I think it's very valuable, all the experience that most of us have acquired at CERN. So I couldn't say that there is a limit on age. I couldn't say that. On the other hand, it's better to prepare the phase out. I did, and it was very powerful for me. I mixed with business, I did an MBA, and it was a kind of a phase out, which helped me to really get onto the speed of the business, which may help.
Thank you. If I may just follow up, because you said something that I wanted to allude to, that was the competition, I mean, not the competition, but the fact that on the market, you're also with younger people that have less experience than you, but at some point, you know, I guess the company need to pay the expertise. So it's a trade-off, you know, because you have the experience to also do the job, but you need to be paid more somehow. So I'm wondering, you know, if at some point you say you have too much experience, so I need to pay you too much. I prefer to engage someone younger that will learn, you know. But all companies are different in that respect, I think. You know.
I can tell you one thing. The first employee of our startup was experienced one, 15 years experience, and we hired him. And we have hired a couple of young guys, even 3. But the first employee was a senior one. Depends. Value, you pay the value of the things that you, that you want to get.
Mm-hmm. I guess that makes sense. I guess that experience is important when you're a startup.
Yeah,
it's
incredibly interesting. Yeah, needed.
But if I may say, my second that also, I think it's not only in startup, but also in well-established companies and research institutes which are dealing with environmental science. So for example, at NIVA, I think probably it also varies from country to country at which stage the digitalization on environmental sciences is now. But I think it's big demand to automate things and to make the move toward using more advanced technologies. And typically the scientists themselves, which are experts in their domains, they don't possess this knowledge. So I think that the experience is the key right now. I would also second that's more valuable than actually being young.
Thanks, Sophia. I think Giorgio has something to say on this point too.
Yeah, I just wanted to basically second what was said already, and also complement in that it's not only about the technical skills, I think, that are important that you gain right while being at CERN. It's also the way of working, right? You can work with across various time zone with different cultures, right? And also managing remote teams. This is something that is really something that is a plus, right? It's not only about the skills or the technical skills, as also Sophie mentioned. It's really the full package that you get. And I think it's just a matter of finding the right way to sell yourself, right? Of course, sometimes you end up by putting a lot of papers, right, in your CV, which of course are relevant in the academic field. In the industry, they really want to see, okay, what does it mean? What are you bringing? And why do you think you are the right candidate for the role? And as a matter of fact, in our team, we are really a lot of expertise, right? And people with several years of PhD and postdocs are actually appreciated because they really bring a lot, right? Of course, you can hire somebody that is young to grow him directly, but I think you should really keep in mind how worth is the experience that you are doing at CERN for the future career. So don't be discouraged. There is no hard limit. It's just a matter of finding the right way to enter if that's what you want to do. And be resilient, not be discouraged by the first application that doesn't go through. That would be my advice.
Thanks very much, Giorgio. And I think that I heard there is that CVs are not all the same. The CV for industry is not the same as the CV for academia. That's a valid point, I think. Samir, your hand has been up patiently for a long time. I think we'll take your question next.
Sure, no problem. Thanks. Thank you to all the panelists, first of all, for sharing your journeys. So my question is to all panelists. Manil, you specifically mentioned that you did technology enterprise, master's in technology enterprise, and then also master's in project management. And I know, for example, that Mario has done an executive MBA at some point. So I'm curious to know from the panelists, how important were these, let's say, this training or these degrees in a formal sense? So how important was it for your career to have this to move forward in the environmental industry? And do you encourage people who want to go into the environment industry to acquire project management and enterprise technology experience beforehand or during the process?
Yeah, may I? I did it before because I just wanted to phase out smoothly. I could have done it after. So if you can manage before and you can accommodate with at that time, I just negotiated with CERN to do this phase out, and it was agreed. So it was an extra effort for me, but it was done. So I could do it before, but whenever it fits you, it's a kind of a personal decision as well. Actually, I had a problem because the easiest option for me was IMD in Lausanne, which is 45 minutes driving from Geneva, and I was living there. So it was very easy, but it was pretty much focused on banking and pharma. So for me, it was not the target, actually. So I was looking for other MBAs or other trainings, a bit more focused on environmental industry. But it was a kind of a trade-off. It was a personal choice. If now I was not conditioned by my personal situation at that time, because I had a family close by, I would have preferred to move to more specific trainings or business school focusing on industry, on environmental industry. Yes, but I couldn't. But I would strongly suggest to do it this way, if you can.
Okay, I see.
I'm happy to add to that, if James, if that's okay. So
ahead,
you know, my trajectory after CERN was to go to a business school as well. I think personally that was extremely valuable because it just gave me both the skills and understanding of the commercial space, but also the credibility to move into a commercial role, which is what I was looking for. If I didn't have that degree, I think CERN would look fantastic and would probably get me into, you know, basically any job, particularly in the civil engineering world, because that was my experience, my education. But the commercial degree, and it did have a sustainability focus. I don't know if it needs to, but that was certainly useful. That helped me get into the next role, which I wouldn't have done otherwise.
Thanks. And Mario, I see you're also unmuted, so you want to chip in?
Yeah, if I might. Yeah, so I think the degrees are important. I mean, so it's important to have there's no question about it. The paper sometimes helps you to get a job. So if you want to change careers, MBAs are fantastic because they are designed for people who wants to change careers. That's what they are designed for. If you want to change careers and you go to an EMBA, an executive MBA, well, that's just ridiculous because executives MBAs are not there to change careers. There were people usually that are supposed to advance into leadership roles. So I guess the lesson, I mean, like people here is incredibly smart and they are incredibly, they have big achievements, but the problem is that there's a problem people trying to become a professional student. So if what you have to is to get a career, then I would recommend to try to get the job first. And really see what is the degree that you need to get. If you need to get the degree to get a job, obviously, but if you can get the job without a degree, start the job and maybe you get a degree to improve in that job. Because the last thing you want to do is to waste 2-3 years taking a degree that's not going to take you anywhere. And a lot of these degrees, especially a business degree, sometimes it's better if you are actually doing a little bit of it. If not, it's just too theoretical. Like it's just you can't relate to what you're doing. So, but of course, if you want to change a degree, I absolutely agree. Like especially MBAs are very good for changing careers, and you see these people, that's what they do, and they get a job out of the MBA, especially if it's a top school. It's just fantastic. And if you are from physics to move into business, absolutely. It's physicists are very smart, but physicists don't do any business, very little.
Yep.
So absolutely. And then there is what comes with an MBA is you come the communication, the leadership, like it is the whole package. It's not just doing spreadsheets and financial or whatever, you know, it is the whole package. So yeah, I recommend that if you want to do a career change, but be careful of what you want to do. Just look at the program.
A lot of nodding heads on the screen, so thanks for that. And the next question is also for you, Juan Mario, from Alexandra Tudoro. What other sources of financing did you manage to secure to develop your startup apart from grants?
Yeah, because we are VC funded, so the grants are great and they take you a long way, but for a startup, you really need to get the private funding if you want to go beyond. So in our case, we were lucky that our first round was a seed round and became a VC round, a venture capitalist round pretty quick. So since our first round, we have Aramco is one of our investors that they put significant funds, and we have some VC and other VC from European, and we have some small business angels. Small compared to Aramco, but the business angels, European, the Swiss business angels ecosystem is quite large, you will, and the VC European network or worldwide is all connected now. It's getting much more better and it's much easier to raise funds, I guess, than it was a few years ago. So that's how we're funded, and we are fundraising now. We are doing now our second fundraising round, and we are actually doing. This is a large VC round, and we are doing a crowdfunding as well. And the crowdfunding is to bring individual people, friends, family, supporters, because we close a VC round too early, and that kind of closed the doors for us to being able to bring individual people. Once you have a VC round, then you cannot just bring anyone. It's obviously you have to talk to your shareholders. So in our case, the crowdfunding provides a mechanism so we can bring individual people. So if I was going to do it again, I say, well, try to do your first round with friends, family, and supporters, and then go for the VC round a little bit after, if you can. Of course, no one can. I mean, you do whatever you're. Yeah, the choosers cannot be, beggars cannot be choosers, but you get what you get. But if you can, try to do an angel supporters round and then later on a VC round.
So everything from Aramco to individuals. That's quite fascinating, actually. I'm learning a lot. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Rebecca Taylor, a question on policy. How do policy decisions affect the innovation you have all been able to achieve? Do you believe there are policies that can encourage the market to promote these research-based startups more? I guess, Mario, maybe we start with you, actually, since...
Sorry, could you repeat that? What is the policy? Yeah. So that question, I was reading that. Yeah, absolutely. It's all about policy. So if a physicist really wants to be impactful, like immediately, you guys go into policy, because it is all about policy. If you see a lot of the startup initiatives or the initiatives that the governments take are because of policy. The funding that the programs that allow startups to get initial funding to start is because of policymakers. Everything that is happening in the environmental field today is all because of policymakers, and all the policy is usually backed by scientific data. So today, for instance, we have these decarbonization goals in the marine industry. That's a clear example, and we are creating regulation in order to push this decarbonization, and that's all based on pure research. What is out there? I mean, a lawmaker can come and say, well, tomorrow everyone has to decarbonize, but what's out there? That's impossible. So what are the real fuels out there? What are the real emissions? What would this imply? And of course, a lot of that comes from, a lot of people can do a lot, but a lot of the policy is really based on hard sciences. And physics is a great tool for that. People, especially you have been doing data analysis, you can read numbers and you can come with conclusions. So if I would say that's the most important part, is actually the policy making. So
okay. Yeah. What about the other people who have experience of startups? I mean, would you like to add to that?
Only to essentially back up what Mario is saying. I mean, you look at the electric vehicle space and it's the same situation. And in the UK, we've got pretty fantastic policy, actually, relative to other countries around the world currently. Hopefully it all goes in the same direction. But initially there was a ban on new sale of petrol and diesel vehicles from 2032. that's just been brought, in fact, it was 2035, that's just been brought forward to 2030. And the impact of that over the next 10 years on the uptake of EVs will be immense.
Thank you. Any further comments on that? There is then there's I think one more question, but a lot of discussion around it in the chat already. But let's hear what the panel has to say about it. So, from Antonella Sicuro, would you say that just applying to open positions is the right strategy, or should one invest in networking and meeting people? So, what's the approach for getting a job? Networking, just applying for open positions, some combination of the two?
I can start on that, if I may. I think it's really, you should really invest time in networking, and especially because now we're in a digitalization phase for environmental industry. I think there are many workplaces which don't really know how to recruit people with our skills. They would like people with our skills very much, but they typically don't open positions because they don't know exactly how to specify the job, and also are maybe, at least this is the case in my institute, are a little bit reluctant toward not getting the right candidates ever, even when opening because let's say our skills are not that common also on the market. So I would definitely take a phone and call and try to investigate what type of job is possible, and try to find an arrangement. I got my job like that. Maybe that's why I'm strongly advocating that.
And as Rachel points out, of course, via the CERN Alumni Network, so, which is what we're doing now, I guess. Anybody else want to add to that? Manel, please.
Yeah, I think I've never had any of my employments just applying to a position. I knew I got information for all of them by contacting, networking, all of them. Then I had to apply as well, certainly. But everything was on networking. And I would say that all the business I do today, it's networking. So LinkedIn is extremely powerful tool. Actually, we are now in our startup, we are doing all the e-marketing. Everything is e-marketing. So use that and create content, I would say. So get information, publish it, make your profile interesting, and then network.
Thank you. I see Christopher Kalbeck, and you put your hand up too. So please.
I did. I hope that was okay. So
Absolutely
perhaps
fine, yeah.
Representing kind of the employer side of a medium-sized research institute in a small country far up in the north, maybe not kind of relevant for all, but I still think in some degrees it's the world is becoming global also in terms of, as an employer, finding the right talent pools, and that is increasingly hard. So as Manel points to, for people coming from research, I think at least based in Norway, using, for instance, LinkedIn and social network for kind of having their intellectual conversations with others is not the proper. It's not the tool that you're used to. Or at least what we see is that that's not regularly where the conversations go on. But I and other employers definitely see that that's where we typically, at least sometimes, end up finding the right people if they are available there, if you can find them, because it is an open network. While as the alumni networks, not particularly the CERN one, but in general, the different schools, they are closed. So for me as an employer, it's kind of hard to get in there. I need to find a venue like this where I can kind of preach my gospel, or at least tap into your conversations and figure out whether there's potential. And as Sophia points to, it is really hard sometimes to put out the job posting that would trigger the right response. I would rather have somebody approach our company, our organization, just checking for opportunities or whether there is something there, having done just the basic research, understanding what we're about, what we're trying to achieve. And then, yes, you probably won't find out everything by kind of doing the regular research, but by contacting us, you would be able to talk to the people that, for instance, like me, have a responsibility for helping modernize and digitize part of the work that we're doing. And I definitely see that there are a number of kind of positions and roles, not necessarily chipped out in stone today, but that might be developed if the right person with the right skill set come into the organization. And that's not a job posting, that's a discussion and dialogue.
Thank you. Giorgio, your hand's up as well.
Yeah, perhaps I just wanted to give an impression. I think what is important, right, when you are going to apply is not to, at least for our perspective, right, not to apply a mass, so 100 applications all the same, right, for the job posting, no matter what is in the posting, but really spend some time to look at what are your skills, right, that you can bring for the specific opening that you see, and learn about the company, right, what is the company doing, so that you can accompany your CV with a cover letter that shows that you know why you are applying and why you expect that that company is the right move for you. So I think this is really important, and sometimes you tend to really fire off, 100 applications or 10 applications per day, and then you hope that something comes back. But if you spend real time to really prepare for it, you will see that the success rate, or at least the reply rate, will be much higher.
Yeah, that certainly tallies with my experience on the recruiting side as well. So we're at about 3:10 now, and I don't think there are any more questions coming in, but I'm going to give the last word of this session to Rachel, since we've been talking about networking, and I'm sure you would have something to say about that, Rachel.
Yes, I do indeed. So thank you, James, and thanks for all these great presentations and also questions and answers. So in terms of networking, I would, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I would advise everybody here to join the CERN Alumni Network, to keep their profiles up to date. The big difference, I think, with the Alumni Network is in terms of data, you own your data, whereas if you're on LinkedIn, there's the issues with what's happening with your data. I understand there was a recent data leak with LinkedIn, whereas on alumni.cern, you own your data. And then also you can be sure that all those members who are on the Alumni Network are people that have a shared experience. So they've all gone through what potentially you'll be going through perhaps in the next few months. And you can see this, they've been in your position, and what I've seen so far is that CERN alumni, they're all very much willing to share their experience with you. And also, as I said, you can see that people on the network are, the CERN Alumni Network are bona fide CERN people or had been CERN people, whereas in LinkedIn, anybody can say that they've worked at CERN. We found many cases of people claiming they've worked at CERN, but it wasn't quite true. So my tips for you are, in terms of networking, use the CERN Alumni platform to the full. Don't be frightened, I think, or concerned about reaching out to people. You'll find that people are very receptive and are very willing to share their advice with you. Also, just on our side, so the alumni relations team, we've started organizing, in addition to the moving out of academia events, we have approximately once per month, we have companies that have advertised their job opportunities on the platform. So these can be either companies interested in recruiting from within the CERN alumni talent pool, or also alumni working in companies where they know that they're seeking people that are similar to have similar profiles to theirs. So once a month, we have companies that can have a 1-hour slot on Fridays between 12 and 1, where they make a presentation of 30 minutes about the company and the type of profiles they're looking for. And then you have a 30-minute Q&A. So this is a very nice way to network and to actually start that discussion with companies that are recruiting. It's quite a nice, it's a relaxed and quite informal way, and it demystifies the part of the process as well. So I think probably everybody wants to go and have a quick coffee. So
I think so, but I see Mario's unmuted, so does that mean you have something to say?
No.
Okay, I'm just paying attention to what's happening on the screen. Okay, so it's about 1:15, so let's reconvene at 5:25 for the second session. Thanks again to all our speakers, and thanks to everybody for being here, and we'll see you in 10 minutes.
Thank you.
So I make it 25 and I see people reappearing on my screen. So welcome back, and I hope you all had time to stretch your legs, get some refreshments. So the second part of this is all about asking our panelists to share the tips about how they made the transitions to where they are, and the kind of opportunities that might exist for people coming from CERN in the field. We're going to go around our virtual table again. And Charlie, if you're there, you are fantastic. We'll start with you. I'm actually going to start by a question that's, well, a question from me and a question that was a question from me specifically to you, Charlie, but a question that came in by email that's relevant to everybody, actually. One of the participants said, I've always studied particle physics and do not have a deep knowledge of environmental science. Could you please suggest textbooks, lectures, or any other references that might help me gain knowledge for this kind of transition? And the specific question for you, Charlie, I mean, one thing that impressed me is you said that your company, Octopus, was flexible and they allowed you to transition out. Is that common? Is that was, I thought, quite remarkable, actually, to see that degree of flexibility in a commercial entity. So, so anyway, question for you, and maybe other people can reflect on that too. But okay, let's start with you, Charlie. Tips and ideas for people to make this transition.
Sure, James. Sure, thanks. I'll just start with the question around the business being flexible to begin with, and then move on to the question around resources. I think it is more and more common these days that you might be able to achieve this sort of transition out of a company. I think I was lucky that the business I was working for, Octopus, was itself only 4 years or even 3 years at that point. Prior to that point was a startup. And so there was a very entrepreneurial culture. And as a result, they were very happy to support me, you know, to go on that journey myself. I wonder if now that we've come into a situation globally where work, I think, is going to be more flexible anyway, and the notion of maybe not doing 5 days a week might become much more common, even if you just want to take a day or two to be with your family, let alone if you want to, you know, go and start business. So I would like to think that we're in a position now where it's much easier and with a wider range of employers to get that situation where you're part-time. On top of that, I would highly recommend it in certain scenarios. I mean, I suppose it sounds like Mario was throwing a load of cash as soon as he had an idea, which is fantastic. It might not be true, Mario. It feels like it was a very quick start for you guys, which is awesome. And you know, there are obviously situations where that can be the case. For myself, it's my first business, so there's a lot to learn, and things always take much longer than you expect. You know, my own personal sort of personality is to go really fast at everything and try and accelerate everything as quickly as possible. And yet, I would say I'm still 6 to 12 months late in terms of being, you know, generating a decent enough amount of revenue to actually even afford to pay myself a salary, right? So things do take a long time, and so the more that you can transition into starting a business with a salary, the better. It means you need less money to begin with. You know, it means you maybe don't need to sell some equity that you would have sold otherwise to have some cash just to keep you going. So definitely recommend it personally if it fits that situation. So and then to move on then to the resources, I'm just going to give one. I'm sure everyone's going to have lots of pieces of advice, so I'll just give one piece of advice. Is I think if you're interested particularly in getting to the real crux of the sustainability challenge and the solutions, the one book I recommend is called Sustainability Without the Hot Air. And it is a little bit, well, it was published potentially 5+ years ago now, but still I believe today remains a really great way to get an introduction into the numbers behind sustainability, because I think probably all 98 people on this call, we like numbers, and sometimes it's too easy to start talking in abstract terms about sustainability. But personally, for me to really understand things, I like to see the numbers behind everything. So that's my one piece of advice there. If there's anything more, James, you want me to contribute, happy to, or I can pass on. Oh, you're on mute, James.
Sorry. So yeah, I think we'll pass on now, but we're going to have questions afterwards, so I'm sure there'll be time to build on these things too. So we'll go the same circuit as last time. So that means we're moving on to Georgia.
Yes, sorry, I was just searching for an archive article to share it. I would recommend tackling climate change with machine learning. I will post the archive into this chat. Give me a second, everyone. I think this is a nice article that shows how basically you can apply this kind of techniques. It's from 2019, so it's relative fresh, and it gives you a little bit of the perspective, right? How you can use data to tackle one of the biggest challenges that we are facing right now. And it's also a nice read, and especially if you like the technical aspects, it also gives you a little bit of hints where to look, right, for searching for some nice algorithms that you can apply.
Rachel, I guess that we'll circulate any of these resources that we're collecting after the event.
Yeah, I'm noting them down furiously. Yeah.
Yep. And so I'm still interested by this flexibility of Octopus. And Georgia, would you imagine that if somebody came through E.ON, they could use it as a transition to setting up their own startup with support from the company? Is that a possibility for a much larger company, a much more established company like E.ON as it was for Octopus?
Yeah, first of all, I mean, the flexibility is one of the hottest topics, right, these days, and how to manage it in a proper way. And I said the problem is the scale, right? You can have a lot of minimum viable products that you can develop on a pilot phase, but of course, what you want to do to really have an impact is to scale all these solutions, right, in a wider area that you can. And as a matter of fact, I think we are aware of Octopus Energy. It's also one of the biggest competitors in the UK for E.ON. And it's really amazing what the company is doing, and something that, I mean, we are also looking on our side, right, to equip and make the company digital. I think one of the challenges, right, on this in the energy sector at least, is that it's a very asset heavy, right? You have a legacy of a lot of engineering parts, which are kind of related to building, operate the systems. And we are not yet at the level of digitalization, right, that you would wish in order to enable this smart solution. It's a transition that takes place. And of course, the bigger the company, the higher are the challenges. But I think E.ON recognized that. And it's really nice time to be here, because you have really the feeling that you have the opportunity to really make an impact at the end. And I think E.ON scale clearly is an advantage, right? To provide, once we have developed something in one country, you can easily roll it out and really make a difference at the European scale.
Okay, thanks very much. So we'll move on to Manel. Tips and advice for our audience, please.
Yeah, I will, like a source of information for me, I always like a lot. I will share it with the audience. IRENA, so it's the International Renewable Energy Agency, and they publish plenty of nice, interesting things in particular topics or energy outlooks in general, and it gives you a very nice overview of what is moving on. And I would like to share another thing, which is not really a book or a list of documents, but it's a kind of ecosystem for those willing to jump into this sector. This is InnoEnergy. It's a kind of accelerator of startups in the energy field in Europe. And it's not because of the startups themselves, but it will give you a flavor of all the startups and things that are moving around and popping up now, which gives you already the insights of the market itself. So I have shared that in the chat. And I think both things are really sites that I'm looking always all the time because of that, because yeah.
Sorry, if I add, because that's I think that InnoEnergy, they also do master's degrees in sustainability and environmental issues. Yeah,
they did less and less. So I know that they're pretty much focusing on yeah, there is a couple of masters. Actually, it's kind of a bilateral masters. You spend one year in Sweden and then another in Spain, or in Portugal and Spain, so on and so forth. But it's the activity is focusing pretty much on startups and business creation rather than training. But in any case, they have also some publications which are very nice, and it gives you insights on the market themselves. I mean, the PV, wind, or whatever. And both sites are really relevant for me, and I look regularly.
If I just may add as well, we have a connection with them because we're connected in terms of their alumni network. So if anybody also wants to have make some connections, I can perhaps facilitate that as well.
Actually, our startup got financed by InnoEnergy, and actually we're getting people from these training programs as well. Yeah, it's really powerful.
So we'll move on to Juan Mario now. So you said after your talk, you made it sound all very easy. So what should people who are at CERN now be thinking of doing and learning, and how should they prepare themselves if they want to follow your footsteps?
Okay, so I mean, it's not easy. First of all, it's really not easy. If the startup way is not easy, yeah, it's maybe made it sound too easy, but it was a lot of work. It's been several years trying to raise funds. Raising funds is extremely hard. You have to plan 1 year for the fundraising. So you start from the time that you start, that you feel that you're ready, you plan for 1 year. It usually takes at least 6 months to close around after you already interact with people who is interested in your fundraising. So during all that time, well, when you start, you have to be really ready to survive on your own means, or work and have time to do your startups. It's really not easy. You really have to want to do it and really believe on it. So I guess my advice is just really try to understand and try to convince yourself that there is some value in what you are going to do. That there is real some market value, and good ways to go to pitch competitions, and because you get some validation, and then you decide to put all your energy and do it and do it. At the end of the day, once you decide to do it, you just have to go 100%. Someone told me that the best way to guarantee that you can, the best way to increase the chances that you will succeed in your startup, in your company, is you burn all your bridges, so you have no chance to come back. It's kind of a joke, but it's true though, because if you always have a chance to go back to a job or to do something, you might have some doubts.
Yep.
And that's probably the easier route. But if you have no way to go, you put the best you have. That's your only chance, your only choice. And so sometimes it's good to be unemployable because you have to start a company. But joke apart, yeah, just get educated for what you want to do and convince yourself. So look at all the maybe you're no quite maybe you need some reality check a few times to really decide this is really what I want to do. And what I recommend is you always go and look into the macro level. So now we talk about websites. There's something that I looked at, is called the strategic intelligence from the World Economic Forum. You can look into it, so you can see the macro aspects of a lot of topics. You can decide if that's something that you understand and something that you believe you can contribute, and then you can go more in detail into the micro aspects of the topic that you want to touch. But try to understand the macro topics, because when you start talking about individual aspects, there's tons of misinformation. In our field, which is the marine offshore, there's tons of misinformation. People talk about hydrogen, people talk about fuels, and no one has any clue of what it really means for a ship to run hydrogen, or to a ship to run ammonia as fuel, for instance. And they just put it like that. And so I think you need to understand the topic in a macro level. Go down, go into the United Nations agencies. They have tons of information, and you can really educate yourself. And that kind of connects what I said before, that the policymakers really matter, and the data that policymakers really matter. And you see that people is working behind that are scientists. Yeah. At the end of the day. And once you understand the macro level, then you decide, is this something to do here? Is this really a field where I can contribute? And then you just go for it. And I think for getting a job, I didn't apply for a job after CERN, and I haven't applied for a job. This is all I have done. So maybe I cannot give you a good idea how to enter the market. I mean, I'm not the right person for that. But I would suppose it's the same. If you decide that this is what you want to do, it will help you to target the companies and target the jobs and put all your energy on those jobs instead of doing, like you say, open applications that we discussed before, because that really won't take you anywhere. That's all I had to say. Yeah.
I was not suggesting that it was easy. In fact, I have great admiration for people who do what you do, because I think it's incredibly brave. And I think the message I'm hearing here is that if you want to do that, if you want to start up your own company, you need to learn. You need to do a lot of reading about the subject. You need to have a good idea, and you need to have absolute belief in it and go way back. I think that was a very interesting piece of advice there. You already mentioned earlier, I think you talked about the values of MBAs and executive MBAs, and I think that I found very interesting too, actually. So yeah, anyway, let's move on to Sophia now then. Your tips for moving into following in your footsteps, let's say.
Yeah, so my footsteps are a little bit different. So maybe it could be an advice for those who don't want to go on the entrepreneurial path and don't want to start their own company, but want to continue in research and contributing with their skills as data scientists or yeah, in environmental domain. What I would advise, first of all, is to read on different subjects. I don't have any recommendation, unfortunately. I'm really sorry, but there is a lot of material out there in the internet to see, to find out places where you and topics which you would like to work with, and then find workplaces which do work with the companies and institutes which do address the topics which interest you, and then to take a contact with them and try to develop the role that you would like to have, rather than just throw in and waste a lot of time on throwing hundreds and hundreds of applications. I think to work on 2-3 jobs that you really want to get, and it will provide much, it will be much better use time. And as usual, never get discouraged. Believe in yourself, and believe in yourself. That's also very important. And and stay enthusiastic about the job that you want to do and pursue. That also helps a lot to know what you want to do really and achieve. Yeah.
Thanks. So I think we've all addressed this session was about tips, but it was also about the kind of opportunities that exist in the environmental field. So I'd like to maybe just go around again in a moment to see if you've got if you can give any insights into that. Before we do, don't forget, if you're participants, you can ask questions in the chat. Please feel free to do that. If you want to ask questions directly, raise your hands. And I'm also interested, Christopher, I know you're not officially a panelist, but you chipped in last time. I'm personally interested in knowing what the what an employer's perspective is on this kind of question. What would you be advising people working in CERN to be doing and thinking and reading now, if they want to make this transition?
So there are different. So the environmental area as a domain it's hugely wide, and it's hugely diverse. So from my point, I only see my own belly button in a way. So for me, it's kind of key that people that I talk to that reach out to me or to us is triggered by kind of the mission of our organization and what we're trying to achieve. So I'm kind of taking on the narrow lenses and seeing it as a potential employer. That doesn't have to be from the starting point. So when we come back to so when we meet at conferences or just occasionally meet hopefully in physical presence, having those discussions with people that are curious and interested is kind of the first starting point for having those engaged discussions. Getting to that point, and from a perspective of a kind of a Northern Europe, Nordic setting, it's in some ways it's quite easy to orient yourself within the domain that you find interesting. So let's say within environmental sciences, in aquatic sciences, for instance, it's not that hard to find. So go through the governmental agencies and see what kind of reports are they presenting, what kind of policies are they creating or setting up the kind of the factual foundations for. Policies are made by politicians, so unless you want to go into politics, it's good to kind of know what drives the policies, and that's where science and research come into effect. So having that kind of the spark for doing research and doing the science and applying that the skills that you have with you from your previous work is I think at least what I'm looking for in people that I meet with and talk with and collaborate with, because if the spark is there, you don't need to write an application. That's kind of what I want to, or what we need to see. So if that's there, I'm pretty confident that anybody with the kind of background that the people coming out of the CERN as alumni from CERN has the proper skills and background to basically mouth over anything. So again, what I see is that it's not about the specific techniques that you're able to apply or the projects that you're able to acquire or drive. It's more about being able to think out of the box and actually make use of the kind of the academic background that you have and the way of solving problems, hard problems, through techniques that you have been kind of working with through whatever line of work that you've been doing within basically any academic institution. But of course, CERN is a Champions League type of organization, I would say. I'm not sure if that kind of responds or passes on all the marks, but it's I think that is quite key.
Very interesting, yeah. And I see Charlie's got his hand up. And one thing though, I just want to interject something that just comes from my own experience, seeing that we've got 3 people who are involved with energy and smart energy here. You know, I can see there's of course a need for people who have technical skills, but one of the issues that I've observed, and I think we observe in many areas where science reaches society, is public acceptance of these things. I remember when France introduced smart metering, there was such resistance to it. So, yeah, how big an issue is that, and other opportunities perhaps for people to get involved there? Anyway, Charlie, I don't want to hijack the conversation.
No, that works quite well, James, with my point. I suppose I just wanted to maybe communicate a framework that I've used to think about where to apply myself to the general sustainability problem, because part of the challenge when you're starting out is that it is enormous. It's basically everything is a sustainability problem today, which is good news. There's lots of work to do, but it's quite difficult to think, where do you focus? So I would say perhaps one way to look at it is you could maybe consider 3 different parts of society, if you like. So there's roles, there's work to do on a policy side, on an industry side, and on a financing side, right? And that financing side sometimes doesn't get talked about too much, but it's actually massively important, because ultimately it's the people who control the money are the people who can make massive change by making decisions to invest in sustainable solutions and not pumping money into oil and gas companies like we have done for the last 100 years. So my first point would be, don't forget about finance. It is, it's hugely impactful. So once you've figured out, do I want to be in policy? Do I want to be in a business like startup or a big company like E.ON, or do I want to be on funding? I think that's a nice way to look at it initially. And then the next level down is, you might actually end up being in a role where you are sort of across lots of different areas of sustainability. But some of the interesting battlegrounds for me, like if you're really interested in getting involved in something that's a real challenge and trying to maybe make progress and traction where there isn't much, there are a lot of battlegrounds that still are really quite early doors in terms of progress. So I would say, the worlds that I guess we've mostly talked about have been energy supply and transport, and actually the progress there is pretty great. I mean, there's a lot more to do, but it's moving, and it's moving in the right direction, and the momentum is can always be accelerated, which is what a lot of us are trying to do here. But it's already moving in that direction. There are some battlegrounds where that's not the case, and I think maybe just a couple examples. Like, one is probably agriculture, and another is heat. So heat is a really interesting space. How do we heat our homes? How do we heat our businesses? How do we do that without burning gas? Is a massive challenge, and it's one that is very unclear as to exactly how that's going to work. There's a big challenge, big engineering challenges. If you want to electrify heating, you've got an electrification challenge that's an order of magnitude greater than electrifying transport. So there's huge amounts of investment, technological advancement, commercial development, propositions for consumers, and to get back to your point, James, consumer acceptance, right? So you're dealing with people's homes; they're going to have to adopt these technologies through their own decision making, and we have to, as an industry, as policy, as funding organizations, we have to make it cheap and attractive, and simple, and that's how you get people to adopt these things.
Thanks very much. So I don't see any questions. Do any of our other of our panelists wish to chip in there? Manel, yeah.
Yeah, if we talk about battlegrounds and making the connection with CERN, I think one field which is really moving forward now is nuclear fusion technologies. It was a kind of a research initiatives, I don't know, the European project, ITER, the international project, and things, projects like that. But now private companies are investing in private initiatives to develop fusion commercial reactors. And basically this is based on the same technologies as CERN is using. So superconductivity, vacuum, magnets, so on and so forth. So apart from the classical battlegrounds of energy, which are renewables, heat, and Charlie mentioned a lot of them, I would say that this is a kind of a battleground which has a long-term perspective. And now it's not only going public funded, it's also private funded. So it's a kind of a nice battleground, very similar and complementary to CERN. And maybe just to try to get Giorgio in, I think digitalization of energy is amazing. This is huge field of activity, and I'm really in contact with the technology transfer from research to industry, and this is really ramping up tremendously. This is amazing.
Giorgio, do you want to say anything on that subject?
Yes, of course. I mean, I think it's one of the most difficult, but also most rewarding challenges that we are having. And I mean, it's not just the one topic, right, that you have to kind of drive. There are many, right? You need to be clear on how you manage, right, different systems together. In particular, just going back in the heating discussion, right, it's also about how you put together different domains. So power, heating, transportation, right? Of course, if you imagine that you will have to phase out from fossil fuel, sorry, you need to really change the way you do it. You need to make sure that you are not creating large peaks of demand, otherwise your network won't be able to stand it. And this is really a massive war that you have to win. I think it's something that is important I would like to bring up here is that at least when I was thinking whether to make the move to the industry, I was always a little bit scared to say, yeah, I mean, now I'm doing research, right? I'm happy what I do, I can choose my topic. And I was a little bit feared that actually in the industry, I would have less kind of freedom. However, as Manuel mentioned, I mean, there's so much that we have to do, right, to create the impact that we need in order to decarbonize our society, right, by 2050 or whatever year you want to target at. That is actually much broader spectrum of activity that we are driving now. That is really very enriching. So there is everything for everyone to really work on this field, starting from data analyst, building new models to tackle this project and these challenges. So it's, I think I'm doing probably more research, right, than I used to be doing at CERN, because you have the difference is that you are at CERN, you have the possibility, and if you want also the luxury, to really focus and do your research down to the tiny details. Here we are also instead looking at trying to get the impact as soon as we can, right? And maybe you go for a 80% solution, which takes 20% of the time instead of really spending several years to get the ultimate solution. So you have to be a bit more pragmatic. But the message I want to say here is that it's really amazing what you can do, and with the expertise that you can bring and that CERN helps you to be equipped with, you have really the opportunity to make a better world. So I would really encourage you, if you are interested, to join this effort.
I think that's very interesting, actually. It makes me think of, not in the environmental domain, but companies where the research is carried out mostly with the short-term return required, but also they have a long-term strand as well. So places like IBM, for example, and a long time ago there used to be in the UK a company called GEC that had a research centre which was purely blue sky research, funded by a company, because they saw that provided input for the long-range profitability of the company. That company went under when it focused on a single technology and didn't succeed. But there's a cautionary tale there. So anyway, I'm looking, there are things appearing in the chat now. So Christopher points out it's not just agriculture, it's aquaculture as well. So I think that's a very strong point. And there's a question from Antonella Sakura about the European equivalent of the AAAS. I mean, that's a very interesting question, actually. And there is something. There's an organization called Euroscience, which organizes an annual public-facing, well, not annual, every 2 years, public-facing science conference called ESOF, Euroscience Open Forum. But it's not quite the same as the AAAS. I mean, Europe is not the same as America. I think that's why. So it's harder to have a continent-wide organization that does that. But there are also, if you're interested in the policy area, there are also national academies, and there are federations of national academies, and they work on issues like this and try to provide input to policy. They actually do that in a formal way now through the scientific advice mechanism to the European Commission, where there is a group of high-level scientific advisors, including our last Director General who chairs it, Rolf Hoyer, that produce policy input for policy making at the European level, on request from the Commission, but also on what they think is important. And part of that mechanism involves a consultation with all of the national academies for science too. So no, there's nothing exactly like the AAAS, but there are mechanisms for that within in Europe. Anyway, we are running ahead of time, which is kind of surprising, I guess. And I would like to encourage people to raise their hands or to ask questions. But if that doesn't happen, Rachel, then I suggest we maybe move into breakout rooms for networking already.
Sure, could I ask a question, if
Absolutely.
that's okay? My question was just how optimistic are our panelists that we're going to crack this nut? And so COP has been, that's the upcoming COP conference in the UK, has been touted as the last chance saloon. How optimistic are you that we're going to sort out our climate change, sustainability issues, or is it downhill all the way? That's for any of our panelists. You're all looking a bit perplexed.
I can start. This is something that we discuss almost daily. So today we have 416 ppm parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. We want to keep things. We have a 1 degree budget maximum, 1 degree Celsius. I think methane is a 1.2 ppm. The emissions of methane, so we have focused on CO2 for the last few years, and there is a lot of CO2 capture technologies that are starting to work. Methane, nitrous oxide, NOx, black carbon, that wasn't discussed before. Now we see the Biden administration finally released something. We are going to look into methane. Methane is in the 25-year scheme is 84 times worse than CO2. Nitrous oxide is 300 times more powerful than CO2. Those gases have increased by 150% in the last few years, and so on and so on. And we say, well, we move into a hydrogen economy or an ammonia economy. Well, ammonia emits nitrous oxide. It's worse than CO2. So we need to deal with the nitrous oxide. So if today is looking really bad, that's the solution. There are no solutions. for hard to decarbonize industries, let's put it, hard to electrify industries, let's put it that way. Just, I don't want to offend anyone. Let's say hard to electrify industries. It doesn't seem to be good solutions. So, and you have companies, you have industries, you have Elon Musk giving prices, and you have all this. But if you go to some of these meetings, we attend some of the meetings looking for pilots to do things. There's nothing. We just were in a meeting today for, this week, something is called the Green Shipping Program, that where it's for carbon capture on board. They have to cancel the meeting because simply there is no one technology today that can do carbon capture on board a ship. The carbon capture, the only thing that is working today, well, that you have Climeworks, is about $1,000 to capture 1 ton of CO2 from the atmosphere. And the best solution, the only profitable way to use the carbon today, CO2, is to do sequestration, to pump more oil. So it is looking really bad. So for us to pretend that we can achieve goals, the 2050 goals, without some like decisive action by the US and by the European Commission, it's just not going to happen. It's impossible. So you need both. You need the European Commission and you need the US to take decision action and to really start going very hard against those industries and really pushing. And that comes all from regulation. You have the Poseidon principles, if you are familiar with that. Charlie talked about financial. So they are divesting from fossil fuels. And that's great, that works great. So it has worked very well. So the banks, the biggest banks, are completely divesting from investment into fossil fuels. And from the market side, you have like the C Charter, you have a lot of market initiatives. But at the end of the day, unless it comes from the regulator, nothing is going to happen. So I think it could happen if we get the governments, the lawmakers, and I'm talking about the hegemons, China, US, European Union, if they really take decisive action. If it doesn't happen, it's just not going to happen. It's so much that private industry can do without a clear. Even today, we find people. Talk to people that do not believe in global warming. Even today, you sometimes find some people say, "Oh, methane, not a problem. Oh, CO2, oh, whatever." Even today, which is kind of ridiculous, you find contrarians out there. So, in my opinion, people that actually believe that there is an issue, it should be furious about it. It should be infuriated that nothing is being done. We are talking about the Green Deal and putting all these programs. Well, it should be much more aggressive. So that's my rant of the day.
Okay. I want to encourage you to rant a bit more. So what does it say, the fact that Aramco is a big investor in your company, what does that say about business?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, because we have to answer, how can Aramco be? I'll tell you why Aramco is our investor. If today you were going to count the carbon cost of all fuel, the oil from Aramco will be the cheapest because it's just so easy to pump out.
Yeah.
But that's not even that. But really, the Aramco interest, Aramco, if you were to move into a hydrogen economy, Aramco can produce the cheapest hydrogen in the world from fuel. They basically can float the world with hydrogen tomorrow if we wanted to. It will be the cheapest. If you count the carbon to produce the hydrogen, they will also be the cheapest. So hydrogen's main interest is that we move into a hydrogen society, by the way. So if we move into a hydrogen society and we start really pricing carbon, Aramco will win. And you can go to something called CERAWeek. Mm-hmm. CERAWeek is this big conference, and you can hear the CTO of Saudi Aramco discussing. Super smart person, and he really knows the stuff inside out. And he will come out with the numbers that would show that, yeah, we could move into a hydrogen economy. There are some industries that are very hard to electrify, and they need hydrogen, basically. We can move that economy, and Aramco will win. There is no competition with Aramco in terms of hydrogen production. So they really want this to happen, by the way. So in terms of renewables, the oil is there, but they will even win more. So it is a wrong assumption that the oil majors are the enemies on this. It's not like that. The oil majors could evolve into more profitable business. They are not the enemy, really. We have to be, maybe they were a few years ago, but now this is transitioning. But without regulation, of course they will keep doing. We are all capitalist based, and they do they go where the money is. So at the end of the day, you need a regulator that puts some leash on them. But yeah, that's kind of what I have to say about Aramco, for instance.
It's very interesting. You mentioned the conference. Do you think you put the name of the conference in the chat so we can share that with everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I'd be interested in looking at that myself. Okay, there are lots of hands up now. I think Giorgio's was the first.
Yes, so I rather be a little bit more positive in this side. I think for several reasons. Of course, we need the regulation, right, to make all this technology also become more profitable. Of course, at the end, you need to watch that the company you are running, right, they still make profit to pay salaries, right, and stay alive. However, there is, and of course, this could happen, for example, by increasing carbon price, right? Carbon tax, that is something that is up in the air. But what I think will be the major driver, right? And it's something that everybody can contribute to, is that the customers, right, or us as a consumer, right, are becoming more aware of the climate change. So, I mean, I don't think a business model that doesn't address, right, the wish to become more sustainable will be successful in the future. So we see really the interest of the customers to have solutions that are more green. People are even willing to pay a little bit more, right, on the electricity bill if they know that you can certify that the share of renewable, for example, that we get, it will be larger, right? And I think this is something that we can all contribute to, but there is really a big transition. So a few years ago, nobody was giving really a lot of interest about this topic, and things are changing. So I'm confident that with technology advances, together with also the appetite for the customer and the society for more sustainable solution, we will witness a kind of acceleration of all this transition that we are looking. I mean, technology is there. It's not yet profitable, probably, right? But we know how to do things. So you know how to convert, excess energy that you get from renewable wind or PV, right, into hydrogen. Okay, the efficiency is not that high, but certainly it's something that you can do. And oftentimes, at least in Germany, we are forced to switch off, right, the renewable plants because we don't know where to throw the energy. Our network are not capable to distribute it, right? So I think there is really a big pool of opportunities out there. We just really need to focus, right, and all work on not only do MVPs, as I was saying, so minimum viable product, but also work at scale. And I think this will be fostered through, of course, regulation, but also through the customer that will require and will not come with a company that has no green soul, let's say. So I think here we have all, no matter where you are working from, also a big responsibility, right? To watch what is your energy consumption, what is your habit, and what is your carbon footprint, or also other greenhouse emittents, to really take the responsibility and ask yourself, okay, is there something that I can do to help the planet?
So I'm hearing actually from both Mario and from you, there's a lot of opportunity out there as well as risk and danger at the moment. Charlie, I think you were next, and then Sophia.
My bad. I'll make it a quick point. I think it's something we haven't touched on yet, but most models to reach net zero by, say, 2050 rely on some form of carbon negative technology. So technology that takes carbon out of the atmosphere in some shape or form. And generally, it's very unclear as to what that's actually going to be. And so, if you're the sort of person that wants to, get involved in really building up technology from scratch, then I think, getting involved in sort of designing that carbon negative technology today will mean that, that's a crucial part of what will mean that we hit our 2-degree target or not. It feels like we just won't hit our targets unless we actually find some way of taking carbon out of the atmosphere. So pretty cool place to work if you fancy it.
And again, the acceptance issue looms very large in that kind of questioning too, I think, doesn't it? Yeah.
Very possibly.
Sophia.
I would like to second what Mario said, that we really need some more policies at that stage to make the transition happening a little bit quicker. in my opinion. And in particular, we have, for example, we have nuclear energy, and it seems that we are going the wrong direction here. And instead of investing, for example, in building thorium power plants, where thorium is much more ecological and has much shorter lifetime, but it's much more costly on the other hand, so it discourages also the investment. So we could also work on the better publicity of nuclear energy, because let's look at the numbers. Like, for example, if you look at how many people die extracting coal compared to how many people ever died due to accidents for nuclear power plants, then it's very clear the answer that this is a safe energy resource despite its very bad publicity. So we should definitely consider that. And the one more thing, which we, by having like taxing the carbohydrates, as already been said, we could use those money to put more financing into startups which are working on the developing new technologies to try to accelerate this transition and development. And on the comment that Giorgio made, that people should be aware of energy usage, yes, I think this is great, and we do that in the Western world. But unfortunately, it's much slower in developing countries. And in developing countries, when people struggle with money and can't afford the food, then it's very hard to say, okay, I will pay 20% extra to get green energy. I think it's putting people in a position which they, even if they would like to contribute, they have very hard choices to make. So I'm a little bit less optimistic on that side personally. All right, thank you.
I noticed that the nuclear had appeared in the chat a long time ago, so it's interesting you brought it up. I suspect we could be here all afternoon talking about that if we wanted to, but it is an interesting point. I mean, when we were producing CERN's environment report, we worked with the local consultancy on sustainability, and CERN's energy consumption is 90% carbon free, because our supplier is EDF, and we get the breakdown of EDF, which is I think 80% nuclear and 10% renewable and 10% burning things basically. But they don't see that as green. Sustainability consultancy doesn't see that as green. And I'll give these resources to Rachel afterwards. But we had a very interesting TEDx CERN talk a few years ago from somebody from the Barber Research Center in Mumbai about thorium cycle and what's happening in India about it. And that was actually picked up by a Canadian retired engineer who made a very, very long but interesting video making precisely the points that you made. And I think that makes good watching too. Anyway, we do have a couple of hands raised. Rustem Osmanov first, if you'd like to unmute.
Yes, hi, thanks. Maybe it's a little bit off topic, but I was just listening to the discussion and I was wondering to which degree we're all biased by our technology backgrounds. Because, for example, I had a look at this book of somebody mentioned earlier about the climate change. And in that book that says that one transatlantic flight takes about 2 tons of CO2, if I remember correctly. And before the pandemic, for example, I used to take several of them per year, right? So I wonder if this question in the end will not turn into the question of a lifestyle and life choices rather than a technology, because in some sense technology may be multiplying our problems. I just give you my personal example. So I grew up in Soviet Union, and I remember in the 80s when things were falling apart, there was no things in the shop, right? So it was in terms of consumer society, it was a highly sustainable economy because we had to recycle everything more or less. The bottles, there was no plastic, everything was glass, right? Of course, the heavy industry was polluting a lot, but on the consumer side, things were a lot cleaner. And then what happened, what I see when I go back, right? So we got access to the consumer technology, and that, so let's say the country I'm from, Kazakhstan, is a developing country, and there's a huge appetite for the new things and for consumption. And I don't see that changing anytime soon, to be honest, because the country growing richer, people have more money. And so I think again, the personal sense is that I sort of feel like technology is very exciting, that we all feel attracted to, but in the end, I don't see that solving problem with the 7 or 8 billion people, right? If they all want to live like people in Europe, for example. Okay, thanks.
It's a very interesting point, and point heard. Another resource that I think might be interesting, I must say I haven't read this myself, only a review of it, but Elizabeth Colbert, who's a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, has recently written a book called Underneath the White Sky, which is basically just putting out there what the technological fixes that are being proposed are. And I think the way she usually writes, she does it in a value-free way. She doesn't try to say this is good or bad. She just says it. And when I read the review, it made me think that, you know, my background is technical as well, and there are other points of view out there too. So it's a good point to make. Christopher, your hand is up.
Yeah, just briefly. I'm no climate expert or climate technology expert, but the way you can one way of perceiving is that, so there's one thing in terms of developing new technologies to kind of solve the more kind of directly related technology. So taking carbon out of the circle. Another aspect is that doing so by using various new energy technologies, such as ocean wind, floating solar, you solve part of the problem, but we are actually not yet totally certain how that affects the ecosystems in those places where this is being deployed. So for instance, if you kind of take into account the amount of wind power infrastructure that would be needed to be built in order to sustain a certain amount of, or a certain part of the portion of the population in the Northern Hemisphere, for instance, you would basically have to build wind power systems that's kind of basically is trickled all over the ocean floor, and the effects of that in terms of the ecosystems and the ocean currents, which actually start to come into effect. So the technology is not only a solution in itself; it needs to be looked at together with other measures. And as Rustem points to, I think the kind of one of the elephants in the room is population growth and consumption patterns. And if the pandemic has shown us one thing, it is that humans are still fully capable of adapting to a fairly drastically changing situation. And for instance, returning to previous travel patterns for leisure or business might not be the best way to move things forward.
Thank you for that. Any more questions? We are actually now approaching 20 past, so if I see no more questions, I think that in the chat there's been a lot of discussion about battlefield areas, concrete, hydrogen, renewable gases, batteries, energy storage, and nuclear power, trapped CO2. It's a complex subject, isn't it? I remember when somebody at CERN set up the cloud experiment to look at atmospheric science, I realized that particle physics is really simple compared to this area. So yes, a long way to go. Anyway, Rachel, shall we move into breakout rooms?
Yeah, I think we should, yes. So we've created 5 breakout rooms. Each of you has your own, and people are free to move however frequently they choose to. So I'm going to open those up now. This may mean that it's a goodbye. I don't plan on calling everybody back to the main room, I think. So I don't know, James, if you want to do a quick wrap up.
I would love just to say thanks to all of the panelists, and I have learned a lot. I found this absolutely fascinating, and I hope all the audience has too. Thanks, Rachel, for giving me the opportunity to be part of this as well, and thanks for everybody for coming. I'll just nip in and out of breakout rooms just because I'm interested, I think, for the rest of the afternoon. But thank you, and I'll see you in a breakout room in a little while.